Can I just say, like, for everybody that was wanting the SEC to come up north and play a Big Ten team, like, this was the worst possible option for this. You have, like, one of the best rushing teams in the nation in Tennessee, and you have Ohio State, which is, like, the most southern, spread it out, finesse team. I want to call them finesse. I think that gets used a little too much. But, like, they have really good wide receivers. They're not, like, a ground and pound team. I think they kind of want to be that this season, but like for the for the narrative of like the SEC coming up and playing a Big Ten team in the cold, like you could not have had a worse matchup for this.
Right. Well, and it doesn't get like Tennessee gets cold, man. Like
It
it's
does
not
get cold. They had
it's
snow the other day, I believe.
yeah. So like I mean, I think the weather has been kind of overblown in general. The reason why I said I'm not sure how I feel about it, it wasn't because of the commercial. It's because I I don't know what to make of Ohio State, and I feel like I know what to make of Tennessee. And I think that's actually the narrative in my mind is I'm like, I think Tennessee knows who they are, and I don't think Ohio State has any idea who they are.
You don't think Ohio State knows who Ohio State is?
Right. Yeah. It's like what kind of team do you want to be?
I don't think Ryan Day knows what kind of team it is. I think the
Right.
team knows. Like I think the team. That's my biggest struggle with this Ohio State team. I think the players are good. I think the players know. The players are aware. I don't think the coaches. Yeah, not even really all the coaches. I just don't think Ryan Day does. I think Ryan Day is caught up in making the season about him. I think that he played he played a concussed quarterback against Michigan because he didn't trust his backup, and he just tried to run the ball up the middle with a fifth string offensive line versus one of the best interiors of probably the best interior of its defensive line, one of the best defensive lines, period, in the nation. And it was like, what in the world are you doing? Now,
Yeah.
later on, we understand because Will Howard was missing, wide open players downfield because he was concussed. I almost, for sure believe that. I know he had one good drive, but like if you ever had a concussion, it's not just like one ringing headache the entire time. It's different bouts and like stuff like that. So I'm not gonna get into concussion like I did, explaining the the silent count and stuff. But I mean, this is just a one for Ohio State where they should win this game. They are the more talented team. They have the better defense. They have an offense that is efficient. Their like season total numbers aren't great because they run like 60 plays a game. Now that is part of the reason why their defense is so good because they do slow the game down. Um,
Mhm.
but this is a game where I think Ohio State can win going slow or Ohio State can win going fast. It's just about if the coaches will adjust for Ohio State. I think Tennessee can win going fast. I'm not sure Tennessee can win going slow in this one. So for me, Tennessee really needs to try and dictate this game by going fast, using tempo on offense, and hoping that Ohio State doesn't use tempo on offense. Because if you've watched Tennessee this year, they have a really hard time with tempo when they're on defense. So much so that they are one of the primary teams that will just like have a player randomly get shot by a sniper and go down in the middle of the field, which I don't know how they'll handle that in this one. Obviously, they don't actually get shot. It's just like they fall down and fake an injury, but it's going to be really interesting. So. I don't know. What do you think about the fast play of Tennessee and the slower play of Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I loathe Ohio State's slow play because I think it takes away from their ability to feature their playmakers. But the problem is they don't feature their playmakers enough anyway. So I can understand to some degree trying to slow the game down if you have a dominant running game. Problem is, ever since they lost Seth McLaughlin, and really ever since they lost Josh Simmons, they've not been able to run nearly as effectively, which is it has been a 5-year trend under Ryan Day. And you're talking about one of the best defensive lines in the country. They're going to try to take away the run. I think they will take away the run. I think at that point, Ohio State has to throw. And I think if you're going to force Ohio State to throw, then I think Ohio State in a lot of ways has to play with tempo. But that's going to be, again, it's going to be hard. And again, on paper, you're like, oh, Ohio State should win this game. I look at Tennessee. I think they're stout up front. Ohio State's receivers, I think, can handle the defensive backs. Like, I think there will be open one-on-ones all day, every day. Somebody's going to be open. The problem is, does Ryan Day actually trust his guys enough on that side of the ball? I think the other issue is, I think Ohio State's defense is good, but I think they get into ruts, especially against really talented running backs. Dylan Sampson's going to be arguably the best running back they faced all season. And he will wear them.
It's him and Caleb Johnson, I think.
Yeah. And I think Jordan James is up there. Nick Singleton's up there too.
Right. Yeah. I think Sampson and Johnson are featured more is kind of what I was getting at. I guess if you want to talk about skill, Jordan James is up there too. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. But I think Dylan Sampson, like, he's the type of back, and he has an offensive line, and he actually has a quarterback and receiving core that I think can support him. Just watching Tennessee a little bit, just what they can do, it reminds me a little bit of, and it's not the same style, but Troy Smith and the 2005 Ohio State offense. Not in 06 where Troy Smith won the Heisman, but you have a young quarterback in, I can't say his name, Nico Imaleva. Imamayava. Is that how you say it?
Imamayava. Whatever.
Imamayava.
Something like that. Somebody's going to try to spell it out for us in the chat.
Yeah. Nico. We're just going to call him Nico. Nico, I think he's hot and cold. He's inconsistent, but when he's hot, he's really hot. And I think when he's cold, he's pretty cold. But they have young receivers, but they're explosive, right? Like, I think Thornton, McCoy, like they don't have great numbers, but part of it is they don't throw a lot. They don't throw a ton, but Thornton is averaging nearly 26 yards a catch. Like, he's an explosive. Iamaliava.
I have said it right so many times just watching football, but for whatever reason I get and
I get on the show.
Say, oh yeah, you sure you did say it right. But I get on the show and I'm like, okay, pressure time.
Yeah.
So again, I'm just terrible with names. I apologize. I'm not trying to disrespect anybody by saying the name wrong.
Yeah. But I say that to say, I think Tennessee has the firepower, but I think where people get caught up with Tennessee and being like, oh, they're not as good, is they're inconsistent. But if they put it together, even with a really good defense, I think Tennessee can really sting them. And I think to Alias Gray's point, whoever hits the most explosive plays, I think, is going to win this game.
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think Tennessee is probably more prone to hit the explosive plays than Ohio State is, because I think Tennessee's more willing to go after them, right? I mean, Will Howard has never thrown for more than 5 deep balls. Those are throws of 20-plus yards in one game this season. And the games he's done it have been like Purdue and Marshall and bad teams against really good teams like Penn State. And, I know they aren't really good, but they have NFL talent, so I'll give them credit. Michigan, against teams like that where it's a pressure cooker situation, Ohio State didn't have a whole bunch of big plays, and that's how they got to 38 points against Indiana. They had special teams plays that helped propel them to do that. So they're going to need more of that special teams play if they want to get themselves to a higher point total. And for me, that's one of the biggest factors in this game is Ohio State's special teams going to come back and do better, Or are they going to play like they did against Michigan? We can talk all we want about Ryan Day and his terrible decision making and all this stuff with the game plan, and I think that he obviously deserves a lot of a lot of flack for that. But let's not forget, like the Ohio State punter in that game punted it less than 30 yards one
Yeah.
time, which
Yeah.
set Michigan up for a 4-yard drive and a field goal because their kicker can kick it 57 yards for
Yeah.
a field goal. Ohio State's kicker has never attempted, at least at Ohio State. I don't know what he did before he was at Ohio State, but at least at Ohio State, he's never attempted a field goal of longer than 50 yards. And in that game, he missed two that were somewhere between 30 and 39. I think it was a 34 and a 37 yarder. And so, like, if Ohio State can rely on their kicker to get them points, this is going to be a game that favors Ohio State. But if Ohio State continues to struggle with punting, if they continue to give up long punts to the other team, I think it was the Michigan punter had like a 70-yard punt or something like
Mm-hmm.
that pinned Ohio State inside the 10 when they were inside their own 20 or something. Like it was something crazy like that. Maybe it was 80 yards. I don't remember. But it was a super long punt. And one of the reasons why is because Caleb Downs let it bounce and it kept rolling and kept rolling. And by the time he was going to try to pick it up, the Michigan defenders were there and they were all over him with it. So, as much as Ryan Day needs to have a good game plan here against Tennessee and probably get some big plays and, not just run at Tennessee's defensive line, which is really good, like, they're going to have some good special teams here. I don't want to see Travion Henderson do another kick return. Never.
Yep.
Never
Yeah.
put him back on kick return ever again. What in the world are you doing? First off, he doesn't run straight, which is what you have to do.
Yep.
Sorry, he doesn't run straight. He doesn't run straight out of the backfield either. So why in the world would you think he's going to run straight on kick return? Like, anyway. And Caleb Downs, like he had that really big kick return against Indiana, but that was also a really screwed up kick by Indiana's punter where he was supposed to punt it right and he punted it to complete other side of the field, which is like, well, yeah, you are going to have a good situation there when the entire coverage is going to the other side of the field. But yeah, hold on one second. Sorry. I will say just one more thing though, because I think I saw Gray here disagreeing with me in the chat, and I think I didn't make my point exactly clear about the tempo. When I was saying that Tennessee would do well with tempo, I meant like their offense, I think, would go well with tempo because every time Ohio State's defense has seen tempo this year, they do not rotate the defensive line.
Yeah.
And eventually you are going to get those big plays from Dylan Sampson because Ohio State is a very good run defense. But late in the game, we've seen it years and years and years now against Michigan. Ohio State gets worn down. They don't substitute their defensive line enough, and they especially don't do it against tempo. So even if Tennessee can have tempo in the running game, it's going to benefit them. And they've done it this year on offense. Now, it's not always been great. I think they're used to it, though. But and then on the other side of the ball, Ohio State has to utilize tempo because for the same thing I said, Tennessee's defense does not do well with tempo. Like I said, they've done a little bit of the faking injuries and stuff like that this season, which again, I still don't know how that's going to be addressed here in a game like this, but that's kind of what I was getting at. So I apologize if I didn't explain that correctly there. Zach, give us another thought or two that you have, and then we'll get into some score predictions.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the other things that's interesting in this game is which team can sit back in zone in like a too high shell to kind of mitigate those explosives, and which team can't. I don't think Ohio State will be able to do that as much, whereas I think Tennessee will, because I think Ohio State's offensive line injuries are well documented. You have two potential first rounders, or at least two high-level starters, two all-American caliber players that are out on that offensive line. Ohio State's reshuffling, and that's just not something you want to hear going into a matchup with a team that has a really good defensive line. So if I'm Tennessee, like I'm sitting back and I'm saying, hey, if you can run the ball on us, but if you can't, we're just going to sit in cover two. We're not going to let you throw deep, and we're going to make you rely on intermediate. We're going to make you go down the field, and we're going to make you forcing into mistakes. And I think that's what is kind of the book on Will Howard is make him play until he makes a mistake. And like, I think Will Howard's been very good aside from the Michigan game. I thought he played his best game against Oregon. But I think that's where the explosive plays come in for Tennessee versus Ohio State. Like, I think they are going to make sure that no one gets behind them, despite the fact that I think Ohio State has the better receivers. I think that advantage will get mitigated in this game. And so even though I think they can beat those guys one-on-one, I think you will see a lot of 15 to 20-yard gains by Ohio State receivers. I think they will try to target Emeka Ibuka quite a bit in this game, especially because he has not been featured much at all the past several weeks, with the exception of Indiana. I think he will be targeted. I think Carnell Tate will have a lot of targets. I hope Jeremiah Smith has a lot of targets, but the problem is they're all going to come before the red zone. And then I think it's going to get really tight in the red zone, and they're going to force Ohio State to try to kick field goals. And that's a problem. To your point, Jaden Fielding, not very good, at least not against Michigan. And so where's his confidence at in this game? I think this is a game where we see the exposure of Ohio State's corners on islands. And I think that's going to be tough, especially with the way Tennessee runs their splits. I mean, they are super far out wide, and it forces you to make decisions in a way that most teams don't make you have to defend the whole field. And I think that's going to be an issue. I would not be surprised if Burke or Burke gives up a big play and Igbinosun gives up a couple of big defensive pass interference calls.
Yeah, I mean, Igbinosun leads the country right now in defensive penalties. So that was the last thing I was going to bring up before score predictions, though, is that Tennessee does average over 8 penalties per game. Now, I've not looked into the games enough to know if they had like a 15-game penalty or something like that, and that's, why this number is so high. But still, I mean, even if you've done something like that, that shows you have the potential to have a lot of penalties. So this is definitely a situation where if Ohio State can just not have the turnovers and not make the mistakes, and if Tennessee is going to shoot themselves in the foot and have a hard time, then Ohio State should be able to capitalize on that. I was going to also mention your point on Will Howard. Like, Will Howard is good for one interception in a big game every single time. Now, whether that interception is going to be a pick six, whether that interception is going to be a deep ball, whatever it is, he's going to throw an interception at some point, most likely. And it's just, when is that going to happen, and what's that going to do to the team? And to hear about Jermod McCoy having a lot of deflections and INTs when targeted, would not be surprised if he is in one of those plays to have that happen. So we'll see. Oh, and the other thing I want to bring up, Ohio State, excellent red zone defense. Tennessee, not been super great in the red zone this season, only scoring 81.67% of the time. Ohio State is stopping teams 55, or teams are only scoring 55.17% of the time. That is first in the nation. Teams do not score in the red zone on Ohio State very often. So this is a game where you'll see Tennessee move the ball down the field, I'm sure, and then this game could be kind of won in the red zone, and we'll see what happens. So, Darth Ducky, Ryan Day can't beat Tennessee, he needs to stay forever. Well, you sound like the Michigan fans, Darth Ducky. I can't really blame you. So I would not want him to stay another minute, personally.
Yeah.
All right, Zach, let's let's do our score predictions. You go ahead with yours, and then I'll see if anybody has any in the chat.
I think it's going to be a sad day for fans in Columbus. I've got 30-21 Tennessee.
Wow. This is like a repeat of the Oregon game when you picked Oregon.
Yeah.
John Jacobs says Tennessee 27, Ohio State 20. Philip, he believes in Ohio State a little bit more. He says Ohio State 35-21. This is a really tough one, because I think Ohio State is the more talented team that they should win by 2 scores. And this is no disrespect to Tennessee. I just like Ohio State. I think they have the
Mhm.
top 5 talent composite in the history of college football talent composite, which obviously only goes back like 20, 25 years or something like that. But still, like in the modern era of college football, this is one of the most talented teams that's ever been in college football. Tennessee has a lot of talent too, but can Ohio State take over in those areas where they have more talent? I'm going to pick Ohio State to win in this game. And I'm going to pick them to win 21-17. I think that Will Howard will probably make a mistake and have an interception. I think Nico could throw an interception or two as well. He's still young. I know that he's gotten better throughout the year. And also, again, I'm not wishing that this would happen, but watch those Tennessee games. Nico does not slide very much.
Mm.
And Jack Sawyer, he's knocked 2 or 3 quarterbacks out of games this season. Again, I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but if we're just looking at it and being honest, like it would not be totally impossible for Ohio State to, knock Nico EMI off, EMI, sorry, Nico out of the game. So again, not wishing for it to happen, but
Yeah.
it definitely could. I think we had a few more score predictions. Gray says last second Ohio State field goal attempt. Oh, don't do that to me.
Mm.
Tennessee leading
Mm.
22-21. Who knows if he makes it? Had to make a prediction. It's 22-21 Tennessee and wide right. You know what? If it comes down to a field goal, I think you're probably right. I think he misses it. John says 28-24 Tennessee. I don't know what Will Howard.
It's fair.
We're gonna see. It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And Gus says Tennessee 24, Ohio State nothing. All right, Gus.
If
It'll be a very sad recap for me if that.
if
So if you're rooting for sad JR, root for that
yeah,
outcome there.
sad JR and sad Zack. I have a question. If Ohio State gets shut out, does Ross Bajork walk back his comments about Ryan Day being our coach next year?
If Ohio State gets Clemson in 2018, yeah, you better. You better.
Yeah.
Doug, don't sell your ticket. Don't sell your ticket. We need you to be there and be loud. Also, if you sold
Yeah.
it, you probably sell it to a Tennessee fan by accident.
Don't
They grab
sell the
it.
ticket, Doug. Don't do
They're
it.
out there. They're
Or
out there.
if you do sell it, well, no, I can't. I want to go to the game, but I can't go. But yeah.
Gray says in terms of 24/7 ratings, sure, but where does OSU have an advantage? I guess he's talking about the positions and the players. I mean, I know Nico's really talented, but he's still young. I'd probably still go with Will Howard. I'd go with Dylan Sampson over Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson just because they don't have an offensive line, and I'd go with offensive line for Tennessee. Go with wide receivers for Ohio State. Tight ends are probably a wash. I don't know if there's anything spectacular about that. I'm not seeing anything spectacular from the Tennessee tight ends, and I'm not trying to be, discredit them here. I've not seen anything. Just me personally. Have you seen anything spectacular from the tight ends, Zach?
No.
Yeah.
I think G Scott's improved, but I don't.
No, I'm talking about the Tennessee tight ends.
Tennessee tight ends. No, I haven't.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably lean Tennessee just because I don't think the Ohio State tight ends are all that good. I know this is gonna surprise some people, but I think it's probably a tie between defensive lines. Like I know Ohio State fans are kind of down on their defensive line. I would give the edge to Tennessee just because Ohio State doesn't rotate as much as they should. But if we're talking about just starting defensive linemen, I think they both have two of the best defensive lines in the country. And Ohio State's done that a really good job of stopping the run this year. So I know people are kind of down on them. And then Ohio State linebackers, I'd probably go with them. And then secondary, I'd probably go slightly in Ohio State. I think the corners for Tennessee are probably better, but I think the safeties put them over the top to have them there. So yeah. But that's my thoughts. So Tennessee defensive line is 8 NFL guys. Yeah, Ohio State's defensive line is 8 NFL guys on it too. They're deep. They just don't rotate enough. So I mean, Katie McDonald, you get into a goal line stand, Kaden McDonald's gonna stop it. Like
Yeah.
he's had a high
Yeah.
percentage of doing that this season.
That,
Tyreek Williams is gonna be a first rounder. Ty Hamilton's probably gonna be a third or fourth rounder. Like Jack Sawyer, JT Tuamoloau are gonna be second, first rounders. Yeah. Again, I'm not
yeah.
trying to disrespect Tennessee at all. I just think they both have really good defensive lines.
Yeah. I think the biggest problem, and this is what I would say with Tennessee's, I think Tennessee and Ohio State both have a lot of NFL talent. I think the biggest problem for Ohio State right now is not talent, it's coaching. And so even how those defensive linemen are utilized, not just with not just with rotation, but even sometimes the way they're lined up. So I just think some of the I wonder if some of their technique is antiquated with and I know that's
Well, the
Ohio
Nick
State.
Saban line there.
Yeah. Well, I know that there are some people that are Larry Johnson truthers. And I think he's been a great coach for a long time, but I don't think he's innovated and I don't think he's adjusted. And I think there's other things behind the scenes too, but
yeah, he's definitely not been innovative enough. So
yeah.
he'll be retiring in the next few years, and Ohio State fans will remember him fondly for Chase Young and Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa, but yeah. Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamoloau, we're not the dominant pass rushers Chase Young and some of those other guys were. So yeah, so we'll see what happens.